Thank you, Roy.
There you go.
A game.
It's live streaming.
Do you want to get it open?
Well, I don't think I got the email.
Oh,
Arish, did you send it out?
yeah, I did send it out.
Hmm.
Let's see. Oh shoot, it didn't go through. Okay, it should be sent now.
It's like 5 minutes.
Okay. Advantage 1 is cannabis. Law for use of carbon is uncertain and crushes the cannabis industry. Destroying consumer trust via the fear of counterfeit. 16. 24. Law for use of carbon innovation companies do not rely on federal scheme protection. Possible product tolerance and white cannabis lack knowledge regarding quality. It's a key concern. The limits are available. Identity wasn't reliable. Actually, common great use. Consumers die. What because reliable. Rights and rights of less reliable. Consumers not make informed decisions. Rules on USB to common economic struggle with the process. Even experienced attorneys fail to understand good USB to allow even institute writing to be amended to process companies trying to register cause problems for infringement. For new business unable to predict drugs from their limited geographic area enforcing expensive requires expensive litigation. Marijuana companies multiple states goods within process achieve the fraction of protection take up a bit ineffective for practical purposes. State registration is meaningless since this area is all controlled by federal statutes. Complicated and expensive cannabis businesses who do obtain registration often eliminated and fairly common for applicants to only search federal registration results in considerable expense for law further. This spread for the investment industry causes massive denial of trademarks, preventing crackdowns and legal smuggling. 19. Consumers on without recognition tax, the federal safety team allow business, particularly police branches, from law enforcement for many restrictions prevented only in goods lawful. Branches of the police marks outside of state to law conflict leads consumers multiple deceptive labels, fake goods. Take advantage of 52 significant states with history of legal marijuana by conflict for entering significant quantities, lack of check and significant impact to a small crackdown. Difficult to engage for businesses relying on the states, specifically counterfeit marijuana is the most underregulated vector of Chinese organized crime. Laws 24. Black market rate opportunity for gangs of legal marijuana is 44,300,000 Chinese. A lot of money for casino across the U.S. Human direct tracking for trafficking dealing Chinese operating thousands of illicit farms generated 4.7 billion groups set up unlicensed from unregulated spots. Farm companies model socially legally responsible money for workers facing a little risk taking over industry from Mexican cartels. One to remain up and helping settle under 50 million spills over globally. Kasab 23. Criminals felt the voice presented by state wages contract. Adventure channel, a lot of money in the criminals ban conflicts, Chinese requirements, established foothold in Australia, Eastern Europe, Japan, Canada, US, Russia, South Asia, and Latin America, churches, civil contribution, penetration in all parties. Crime supports destabilization, guaranteeing drawn and escalation, extinction. Kasab 23. Threats come from others in the Taliban system, Russia, instability, anarchy, taking on collaborated art and conflicts that are like suffer from terrorism, corruption, power. In fact, impose crime networks for instability of strong states, reduce crime for renting spill over settling the great powers, exploit weaker states, no self send opportunity for NSA's fragility, invite conflict, for territory and influence states, under enormous pressure to hold under power, competing empower to take control like conflict becomes apparent, lack of federal eligibility is a new constraint on industry expansion. Penetration 24. Restricting access to pizza brand Coca-Cola obtained while agreeing to have no luxury, double standard, and equitable FD polling produce. People's business struggle to access capital, lack of eligibility, branding, establishing brand values, and direct linkage in brand preference, and markets are introduced more than investment into higher value business derivative now market is reflected with industry marijuana without protection is difficult for businesses to expand force of litigation in another state. The impact spills over Germany, harmonization, brand development, globally, INT. 23. Inability to register, impact global brand development, U.S.'s largest econ lack of harmonization and inconsistency makes the companies who establish present U.S. rely on treaties wrestling, leads to complex negotiations and uneven framework. Growth in the cannabis sector is key to broader sustainability, particularly ag and beef. Sorrentino 21. If like the template, the SR ecosystem health limits the artists can have a great benefit tax positively on CT in the atmosphere is rapidly good compared to other crops. 8 times more by massive beneficial factors of DHA low, efficient use of nitrogen due to convert slow release, considered climate friendly, positive effects on biology, loss of track pollinating, and sexual nutrition, species, beach biodiversity. The entire system increase even at moderate values of conductivity help us more productive and is very important for protecting the environment ag in the near future. Extinction from ecosystem collapse of 23. Strong correlation between stability and climate conflict increase 11% due to warm combined impact of ag and create labor, health cost 2% between for each 1%. The economic cost of carbon centers for violence over water and land conflicts can decrease weaken flashpoint migration, great tension, single data points that accurate. Recognize prices for frequent never record lows, occasional cold, not a contract to life changes, even though extended period of reduced solar activity or continued warming, extinct global season, exacerbates water scarcity, wildfire certification, 97% of human activity, carbon environment ICs, disappear with severe droughts in Amazon, there within the loop of deadly conditions, 55% exposed to the ecosystem collapse active, displacing 1 billion conflict, isolation, nuclear war, and civilization B collapse causes extinction in 4 years. Group meal 25 Bs involved with survival upon the 77% of places brings lead to human extinction for its vital insects to find out what CCT severely impacts bee population reduction, lead to notable loss in the medical sector. Now, effective weed innovation buffers nuclear winter from war and meltdowns. Green 18. Cannabis remove radiation commits are happening winter lead from the itself or second harmful chemicals, many heavy metals, office or remote over cannabis because of more faster party attachment credible up to community defense solution. Only our offense cycle statute grounding renders effective enforcement of requirement impossible. Dixon 24. Lawful use land having clearly indicate lack of congressional intent despite restriction later USPTO interpreted all companies lawful use inputs PTO regulation far outside purview suggesting the term reading the second word not violated statute of construction nor in justification for reason unlawful to be found 2 times ability to interpret endless acts of commerce letter from the oppression advisability of attempting to adjudicate compliance with the regulatory act. Therefore, the United States federal government should strengthen its protection of domestic trademarks by eliminating registration refusal made on the basis of trademark violates federal statute. Advantage 2 is overreach. Lawful use disrupts carefully orchestrated regulatory regimes. The plan solved. Micros 22. Lawful use out of administration and on trademark laws other agencies to store discretion. The PTO refused to give preference insists on sanctions even when agencies start not to pursue disturbs carefully or to reduce outright promises of duty. Policy private litigants face a factor private action under statute that do not provide any indirect laws, although denying rights to disrupt register confers no immunity from prosecuting limitations. Previously drafted complication doctrine including armed arbitration no work around with the law saying the PTO is able to comply no longer carbon clear. It will no longer refuse policy put agency compliance with land of alleviate harms examination like where we use the PTO is considered being bad with the agency tax. Agency reinterpretation is key reaching 20. Less way to clarify factors in the registration process. PTO's best position with congressional mandates rules to be clear about what is considered in place of limited time consistency and predictability are viable for anti-crime fencing to as to what constitutes use speaking should clarify that some kids are frustrating results registration risk losing its right to be abandonment. Increase a factor for enforcement of the FDCA. Rape 17. Application of a lawful use makes the land active back for statute of no property cause of action. FDCA contains no property costs and goods are misspent if the amount of lawful use cannot be the basis for registering numerous cases on accepting unlawful use based on FDCA without any problem. That guarantees drug shortages. Kamar 24. Use its experience in more shortage in a decade. Hospitals scamper to locate life-saving drug shortage. They're complicated manufacturing, disruption, quality issues, supply problems, challenging to fill the problems solely by protecting cancer drugs go into shortage. Specialty pharmacies and counter shortage with compounding while supply remain insecure. Compounding plays an important capital role. Most contentious in shortage of GLP-1 is everywhere. Margins are available during shortage of pharma regularly compounded with litigation triggering lawsuits against pharmacies alleging trademark violation, false advertising, unfair competition, private acting to force FTC responsibility of access to medicines, collapses the entire healthcare system, and disease response. March 24. COVID expert the fragile supply chain for pharma availability and represents growing existential health threat shortage of body meds, antibiotic pain med effect patients are raised to great shortage of people unnecessarily die not having medicine health system will fail risk more pronounced infection system restaurant.com COVID reveal the need for resilience supply chain drug shortage and direct medicine pandemics cause extinction bombs should wildlife consequences of humans versus businesses larger than an early speaks point of counter travel urban density create opportunities earlier pattern only killed smaller portion people sort of consistent high probability of extinction effects of collapse drug food insecurity results in insufficient cognitive fitness failure due to interrupted rapidly rise in double catastrophe commerce and harbored this catastrophe contagious cancer causes extinction due John 20 transmissible cancer represents an eco phenomenon some involved in diversification extinction host cancer involved continuously adaptive to generating evolutionary arms race and may be recapitulated to become metastatic cascade specifically private action and those allow subjective discussion that dooms enforcement of regulatory policy saying Baragio and Chi. Private enforcement upset correctly calibrated policy, no check from institutions, private parties, acting financials, development policy goals, take advantage of ambiguity to advance inconsistent with law, establishing bad precedents over determined dependency, social costs, under deterrence of harms. If costs are greater than recovering regulatory policy, public enforcement facilitate uniform enforcement through centralized control. IP regulation balances the upsides and downsides of emerging tech, extinction, RUSCON, 23 tech and downside, protecting non-part analysis, IP consequences, tech really impact by farm pollution, industrial ag mining goes, and antibiotics are responsible uses, but the consequence of AMR, what top that's facing, made probability of extinction is 50% based on destructive nuclear war interdependent climate change, or responsible use of and cause of AMR, but tech communities defaults by protective fixed regulations. They are part of the problem. Our track record not for trial and error because of our ability to buy full life text principle cause of risk to our survival and speed. So they call it uncritical innovation, depression, IBs, and open continuously pushes tech solutions. The consequences of the we should depend on IB to deal with dangerous tech regulation outside of each not saving effect, make them without IB to balance rights and obligation, reins of responsibility. Ethical codes already exist, so it's a matter of making them relevant. Go back to Advantage 1. My computer froze. No, I'm not. Okay. Agricultural sustainability buffers extinction but failure from insect and body loss triggers of impact, famine, switching core volcano, acid, palm, ag crops, fertility, food, and special effective response, but again, besides fertility, ag, dependent on environment, severely impacted by pest, climate, pollinated, decline, severe weather, result in the current ag system is self-undermining, disrupting supply chain, sustainability of appropriate action, nurturers will contribute to the lapse of months, resilience is important, West defense, market defense.
Okay, now are you good?
Yeah, now I'm good, sorry.
Last part on Advantage 2, it says IP regulation in multiple different factors outside of trademarks are key to solve like multiple different existential risks. Plan is like solely trademark marijuana stuff. How do you solve?
Well, no, the San Ambrogio evidence says that specifically private action in the context of trademarks allows or is bad. We think that trademarks are sufficient to solve.
What part of RUSCON do you think is only about trademarks?
No, it's a question of a broad spillover effect
What
because
evidence makes the claim about a possible effect?
Mikos.
Which part? Wait, where is
Oh yeah, the first part on the advantage of the Mikos evidence says that it gives PTO broad authority over both patents and trademarks.
Where do you think it says like it makes it impossible for the PTO to do any form of regulation outside of like whatever the act is about?
It doesn't make it impossible, it makes it uncoordinated with other agencies.
Okay, Advantage 1, what impact part says O-crime causes extinction?
O-crime causes extinction, the Kasab evidence.
Where?
It says that it presents an opportunity to, or quote, invites conflict, and then great competing powers rush in to take control and causes conflict.
Okay, once again, same question, where does it say extinction?
I mean, it doesn't explicitly say the word extinction.
Where does it say nuclear war?
It says great competing powers will take control. Those are nuclear
Competing
powers.
are involved in multiple different conflicts across the world. There's no nuclear war going on now. Same question.
I mean, it says entire regions will result in conflicts. It draws in great powers, which we think would go nuclear.
Okay. What part do you think says that, like, hemp innovation reverse causally solves global warming?
The Sorrentino evidence.
Where?
Well, it says the reasons to cultivate hemp, it creates ecosystem health. It says that it acts positively on CO2. It has rapid growth and creates
Like,
biomass.
this evidence is a study that says like hemp as a plant is not bad for the environment and is good in some areas. Where do you think your evidence says reverse causally that expanding innovation of this is the singular factor that will solve global warming?
I mean, it, quote, the biodiversity of the entire system increase. It has a, quote, beneficial effect on GHGs.
In the study they
Low
conducted, they found-
efficiency in use of nitrogen. These are all things that contribute to climate change substantially. We think hemp would solve.
How does the app solve bee collapse?
Because hemp is good, or marijuana is good for bees. And
Prevents the
marijuana
honey
innovation.
from collapsing.
Yeah, it prevents collapse of colonies.
How does it prevent that collapse?
It cures a specific disorder that causes bees to die in this way. Or CCD.
Okay. We will take that. Who's the actor of normal means?
Actor of normal means, USPTO. Yeah, also non-bindings. So yeah.
What's the longest?
2023.
Yeah, I have you on 8:37. We'll let you know when we have it. How many?
Orders 9 off.
9, 1, 2. Got it. Give me 1 second. Yeah, I'm still
Oh, I have to make the requisite number of flows first.
Okay.
Where is it? I don't see it.
Wish, have you got it?
Wait, let me get it down.
Yeah, sure. I'm okay. Wish.
I'm not okay.
Okay. Yeah, yours. That's fine.
Okay, I'm okay now.
Okay. I'm ready.
Yeah.
First off is the Refutation shaped by the new liberal force of capitalism that commodifies nature, guarantee inequality, existence, artificial or vote negative endorsement of a radical rally slogan to embrace Diego, City 24 violence, and commons power, your pride for progress, and historical origin, industry, capital, which happens, venture, women, mass institution, form of marketing, a little bit to produce, unprecedented income, inequality, together, where energy transition, political revolution, and fierce world, changes, creates, expression, of political, economic, numbers, and counter movements, and marketing goals, positive, continued consumption, increasing supply, renewable, reducing resources, structuring, causing radical violence, slogan, pursuing coalition, less consumption, decrease, non-equivalent, and GDP growth in the economy, and capitalism is systemically unsustainable climate change by D, space war, militarism, pandemics, all independently guaranteed extinction, endeavor, at 3 season, more than the next 3 record project, by D, fortune, fragmented, aspirations, world, and world, and never control future, and never control, and future math, easier for users, including technological function, population, space war, made decolonization was impossible to hold access in colonization, danger of growth, and interest in the profit of the globe, capitalism, floods, droughts, fires, and heat, make climate change, and even for those living in climate change, conflict, extinction, never to conflict, responses to small, exploits, commentary institution failure, pushing us towards the capitalism of wars, ethnic new conflict, COVID exposed that the capitalism of public health and unrepublic integral to use capitalism needs to expand regional process, multiculturalism and produce multiculturalism states, depending on the market for opportunity for corporate countries, which is biochemical and cyber all existing fueled by capitalism. Next up is a topic on reputation as statutory agency has maintains system historical and ultimately one a considered constitution as a contribution for section user violation. The app is exact limits to run exact apps or unlimited reach in your set open which is like proper the next time is talking about the word enemies throughout the word that's word the phrase in protection intellectual property being personal forms of intellectual property that has AD in violation app only protects a specific part of trademarks limited ground small subset apps no link or generic destroyed that ground subset content the other program issues strengthens protection intellectual property and equity strengthening protection domestic trademark limiting registration of fuels man the basic trademark violates federal statute the counter provides equity IP law while lobbyists for which we insert the circumvention inevitable switch between IP and equity never ever remove from the policy for opportunity announcing line allowing non-compliance incorrect focus if your response to resurrect equity and that present spills over prevents executing authority technology abuse of response correctly check the downside attack not part of the announcement on pollution industry act money ozone capital space and preventing may come down to IP balance resident obligations and quality about everything goes on because it matters making them relevant desktop is states limited state governance relevant substantial teacher shares with protection and domestic trademark provide limited registration refusals made on basic trademark violations federal statute the capital laws and avoid politics labor 96 state laws of IP examples of protection is by activities border and then for the law and desktop is the county using member to commit to removing bar from office any person who weeks protection and domestic trademark registering refusal made on basic trademark violates federal statute the 37,000 United States weekly protection and domestic trademark by registering refusal made on basic trademark violates federal statute removing from the extinction the about second the code of organization goes back to 317 20% democracy use on the local bomb like state license trying to use courting data happenings the election is on margin with perfect located election and the English political leadership is undermining democracy for the to maintain right doesn't cause it Trump has been effective for people that just live Trump historically from the record people enter live in military even simple power democracy upgraded effective globally with no power backing and active use improvement in liberal parties increasing of power award incentive for opponents of Taiwan will increase bargains over warranties, United States becomes bargaining wheel having trade made it easy interdependent between states from conflict signals or resolved to avoid most crucial democracy and efforts or use democracy this like the outcome. Next years and next time is the case, there's going to be including a sense of self to attachment, desire for itself, fulfilling prophecy, anxiety and happiness, embrace the Buddhist principle, not self to literally and all self-ratio, and significant helps to eliminate unhappiness caused by maintaining self-inclusiveness, psychological position, not self-state, awareness of peace, and reflects awareness of non-self, universal connection, not self-esteem, there's no self, and next up is the politics of the United States should rescind any tariffs imposed during the Trump administration and not impose further tariffs. As soon as that's another part of the big reconciliation bill, but it's close. Republicans can't lose any votes or have any delay. Signatures 418 Republican Wrangler will never raise debt limit given near majority passing the European Union have reconciliation assets people laws who are vehemently opposed to raising that taxes with the spirit of the copyright restriction on health and having house nearly passed plan to go to have to get their act to get Trump PC is key. But Article 4 one proposal to make him reconciliation Trump moderate Trump's I support racing destiny with the for the GOP's and majority key votes back against the Martin will prove challenging and Republicans don't like upon who smells represents at practical 24 GP's message marijuana has stated that the Trump has no question certain states don't want to smell marijuana and will we do Democratic cities fans oppose own states and the smell of weed and has to be divided and smell of 24 hours and the policy Trump and everything policy from manufacturing from the school policy and we have legislative incentives because we manufacture for corporate tax incentive for R&D for the lifestyle about to use energy for provide for life sciences and thus solves extension uses the Darby and Siegel. We're doing what you need to about to solve humanity was ethics and challenges using climate energy production, climate change, reason, possibility of cost effective use for countries at least. Biotech differentiation worlds and standards run to use China to stay for technology security and use biotech is running by this implication for planetary survival. Next on is the capital I'll send this out later. The United States executive branch should interpret the rulings of the statutory authority neither allows nor requires any protection of domestic trademarks by registered refusals made on the basis of trademark violates federal statutes. The United States Congress should enact and the President should sign a resolution disapproval of this rule pursuant to the Congressional Review Act. It solves every balance of statutory interpretation, every proposal, and every fails to plan. Bring into team matching as transform and resist the uncertainties. I conclude that the balance Congress and shape policy. This theory automatic fashion resolution cancel whether any disapproval can be approved by a negative entering agency can promulgate rule exhibit a right. An agency could, like Congress, use as theory to disapprove trade there's leaving up a negative, disaproving X not permitted is equal to X permitted, and that's what makes it work in 23 and 2 for next cycle 30 in economic warfare corporate to chief jumping from the government made public that catastrophic of the car that catastrophic now go to advantage 110 interrelate between organized crime and nuclear power purposes criminals with the hands on use and their evidence because China is already cracking down on no crime to no organized crime impact motor. 21 non-clear internship crimes reduces from the smuggled optical like network is picture by situationless journalist politician probably budget on their the refutation work has been known one worse is by information technology with the threat of national security and 3 the second castle card assumes crime destabilization Central America and the Middle East which has their zero interlinked because the first castle card is about Australia and Japan completely different countries 4 there is a widely rejected by scientific community these are fine has 15 scan evidence has a contributor B that studies not showing fully designed widely rejected B part of the business we continue. Cannabis can be the harvest size used to increase productivity for human purposes. 5. We going to now solve the war raging, kills us all, and records from research, etc. And says no incident. Impact economists. 19 months we were working on no surveys of incest in China. In Australia, where much of as we showed, authors were looking for results, but the results of NH21 MBA has highlighted their evidence like a Christmas tree. It says most drug-related IP issues are patent based on PCOA. There are episodes of about 2 companies on drug shortages were allowed for more. 24 Nova Nordisk and related files for the lawsuits. Now the recent lawsuits on the company making our claim for having giving most drug IP litigation versus patent litigation. There's a background claims patent for against pharmacy drug shortage that litigation poses a chilling effect of compounding for individuals needed the most. At 2 risk of extension disease 0.01%. Also answers the contagious cancer staying going. 22 pandemic extension for the small hormone survey GCR conference should the mean estimate of feeling to be 5% or estimate of the extension of doing this for years to be 0.01% for countervailing and facts measure. 19 counseling and alarm detection of aluminum and countervailing facts of every positive review. Emerging health costs and changing costs to your caution review. We should probably most individual amount of increments of disagree despite a high tax as planned takes easily illustrate exaggerate and facts up to have property effect disabling effect from immediate and effect job strategy domestic politics culture go back.
Oh wait, no spillover doesn't give a warrant for other technologies.
No spillover doesn't give a warrant for other technologies. I'll read the adventure report. The United States government should judicially legalize marijuana and have established regional intellectual property protection for marijuana. Establish a marijuana intent to use in a system the sweet general spills over and stops the death of democracy. L19 Utah cannot get nearly limited to reforms I mean public your service sweet general regime. I'll send out the zero.
Yeah. Well, Jimmy, do you want to get that?
Yeah, sure. I need the text and the comments.
Okay, we'll send.
Right. Is it? Do you have it, Rish?
No, I don't have it because you just sent it. Do you? We're waiting for you to go.
The CRA thing, sure.
Okay.
I just saw it. I think we're now good.
How is equity distinct from IP rights?
Equity is not rights. It's a different framework that we use to protect intellectual property.
How is it different?
So equity specifically is a framework that says that when certain things are going to like have negative ramifications on like society, like broadly, for example, we would not protect like intellectual property.
Okay, who determines what has a negative ramification on
the
society?
courts would do that.
The courts would do that?
Yeah,
Okay.
courts of equity.
Okay, I want to ask about the impeachment counterplan. It removes a precedent that weakens IP by solidifying the status quo. How is that coherent?
What do you mean?
It enables registration refusals, which are the status quo. How is that a weakening of IP?
Well, I think you're misinterpreting what the counterplan says. The counterplan says that any president who does the opposite of the plan is going to be impeached.
Right, but I'm just confused why it's coherent, because it says the word weaken, but it does something that's already the status quo. Like, how does that make any sense?
I don't understand why it's the status quo. This is your plan text.
Right, and we have said there's a lack of registration refusals in this quo. Okay, that's fine. Status flee off.
Conditionally?
Okay, and was there any hidden theory?
No.
Okay, the politics dissent, the Seggers evidence, where do you think this says that it passes? It just says they need to get their act together.
I think you're like misrepresenting the evidence. It says that like the House is like right now is going to nearly pass the plan, but that requires them like Herculean efforts. So like it says that the bill is going to pass, but the plan is going to be the one thing.
Wait, where does it say the bill will pass? It says they've passed the plan, which is like the framework for it. They're not passing the bill right now.
Well, we would think that like if the House if it says the House nearly passed the plan, it could pass a framework for reconciliation.
That plan is a broad like blueprint about it. Where do you think it says the bill will be passed?
Where does this evidence say that it's like a broad blueprint?
No, that is what the plan is. Like that's how Congress works.
Okay, like you've not read any evidence like that.
Okay, you haven't either. The CAPK, who does the alt?
The alt would be degrowth.
Who does the alt?
The United States.
The United States federal government?
Yes.
Does it involve private actors?
No.
No, it fiats just the government.
Wait, no, it's not like a fiated policy proposal.
So then what does the alt do?
Degrowth.
So it is a policy of degrowth.
It's not like a policy as in it's like a bill or legislation, stuff like that. It's like we think that this is the way that society should function, and we think it should be facilitated.
Okay, so you do fiat private actors. Judicially legalize marijuana and hemp. The Controlled Substances Act explicitly bans that. Why isn't this struck down?
We would reverse the precedent or that legislation.
Wait, but that act is passed by Congress.
Okay,
I
we would
guess
reverse
that's
that. Congress can roll back bills. It's not.
Yeah. 2AC cents. 2AC cents. Let me know when you're ready.
Wait, are the extra off? Okay, I see.
Is everyone good for an order? Just let me know. Let me know when anyone's ready for order.
We're gonna start papers.
Okay. Advantage 1. Advantage 2. T. Cap K. The Buddhism K. The equity counterpart.
Wait, Jimmy.
What? Yeah, it's fine. All right.
We'll run that.
Just get it down. Yeah, fine. 9:48. Add TO agencies to after T-subs. And then cap. And then Buddhism, equity, states, impeachment, CRA, advantage counterplan, and politics.
I have to make one more.
Yeah, that's fine. Good.
Notice number 1, yes, internal link to crime. The 1AC dented evidence says that criminals are not being prosecuted now because of trademark enforcement. Yes, uniqueness or stop evidence says that Chinese organ groups are increasing now and they're selling globally, which answers the spillover claim. 1AC number 2, yes, impact crime destabilizes nation state trust in United States terrorists and nuclear forces which surround the global conflict during their dissent. The Kasab evidence. 1AC number 3, yes, destabilization globally. The Kasab evidence that Chinese groups like the Triad are infiltrating global operations, which answers this claim. 1AC number 4, yes, statistics or evidence is definitive evidence says that crime groups are increasing now in status quo, which answers this argument. 1AC number 5, yes, nuclear winter, we solved it, and by ending inevitable nail-downs, which shows extinction from future impacts, drop climate change, cost extinction, world wars, climate increasing them, 11% excess conflict, research shortages and migration, second ecosystem class, I still speak to kids, droughts, kill, below 3, society class, source, PP, resilience in agriculture, energy, labor, and health, that's petty, drop that sustainable agriculture solves every risk from volcanic corruption, refugee crisis, and future tech, which filters all of their dissent. The economist evidence is old and doesn't assume new warrants about weed innovation. Go to advantage 2. What is number 1? Yes, internal link or evidence is that trademarks are key to brands, so large farmers doing small farmers they get shut down because they've been doing research and can't track the customers. Only it's for companies now, it doesn't matter. It will have criminal evidence is that it will have a future spillover effect, which has this argument. 1 is number 2. Yes, disease causes extinction. 1, they'll kill off the entire population by spreading between humans. 2, causes civilization collapse through market supply chain disruptions. 3, that is impeach geoengineering, which causes a double catastrophe. Yes, cancer impact and causes extinction. Evolve with ecological correction to spread across organisms, which affects all humans. NOI is an unverifiable caller server from 2022, so strike it. There are other card doesn't apply, doesn't assume new civilization class, which is an unnecessary warrant. 1 is number 3, yes, tech impact, it causes extinction to be irresponsible deployment of AVR industrial act, and yeah, all cause extinction from misalignment. Yes, spillover, trademarks are the key vector of ecosystem spillover. T stops. One would be A, functionally plan that affects all trademarks. B, textually plan text in a vacuum is the only objective standard. Anything else involves in positionality. 2, counter-interpretation English with the air of that's case 9. I've been predictions are always similarly scoped that's ordered in team. A, particularly, they have a highlighted shreds of cards that are not grammatical. B, after limits to the all of those students in the pigs. 4, functional limits video trade-off students and kind of like 5, reasonably. Direct substance crowd out. Go to T, no agencies. 1, we mean plan text in a vacuum is the only objective standard. Anything else involves in positionality. Process is not binding. We could also functionally be the USFG. 2, very shabby and spreading. Legal benefits for the rights owner. That's minus 70 database. I'm going to be area section considered trademark. Change the first direction for the owner. This is making it required. But scope. Needs to refer to or certain nobody's transaction includes agency enforcement. Also, 2000 IBM wrestling corporate with century enforcement laws enforced there. Or nonsense in terms of protection for IP owners. Before a position. The evidence sets international, not domestic IPR. Mando is the only conceptually coherent definition. Be background. Congress alludes to the policies to decide and picks on the topic with major controversy. 4 functional limits. Video trade-off students. Spank kind of quick. 5. Reasonably goods. Good enough protectionism. Crowds out. Substance. Go to the cap K1 framework with the absolute fiat consequences against it functionally convicted all there. Auto is non-resident. Devolves defense and offensive fair stasis and protects it. But you all listen to debate and dodging clash destroys effective create 2 case outweighs. Extinction is irreversible for you to both double bind, overwhelm, links, or fills and scroll net benefit. It's short-term extinction for ground disputes any framework. Claims that they will make 4 capital sustainable way to 20. Need over 100 for poverty. Reduction really spelled out to according to still problem. Customers to value near the no for tax create innovation, new balances, efficiency, subsidy not. Yes, they could not remove versus more running relative to demand. Poverty that 8.9 billion new penetration. So high not to account for real education, urbanization, income, freedom to our correlated social capital, abortion, body economy, actively food for license, rest of the world, grow much richer, ability production, improve transfer, allow constitutional free economy, increase outside decline, the sharpest human production for natural for cities to drown, or sure, pink hill for remote countries, democratic growth, economic correct capitalism 5, non-unique, obvious existence grow, and it's already exploded by corporations, 6, reject prior active fiat, 0% deficit, granting everyone instant and 6, all fails, 8 cases, decide rejecting IB, triggers the about escape, B, transition wars, constant power trying, which was the crime stuff, Buddhism, 1, cross-supply framework, 2, cross-supply case outweighs, 3, cross-supply firm double line, cross-supply firm gone 4, no ambassador 1, extra continuing external defeatation make use of economy, experiment, achievement, or penalty, can we go truly believe that has to carry only the observer can have confirming mentality works every well, else we will conclude the result is blue, controversy with the community of what we heading to exit that nobody understands mechanics 5, rejected systemic fiat because it's zeros, all deficits, fiat fails, one ballot cannot change subjectivity, and the USFG cracked down equity, no presumption, durable fiat checks, 1, do the capital plan, run to each bank that doesn't restrict IBR, the ways the after beyond, and equity is used to enforce rights, book 5, judicial opinions, grant neutral legal rights, issue, equity rights, equity law, cross-supply Mandel, for predictably ground, the evidence is no intent to buy, allows evident picks out enforcement, 2, rights are key to both advantages, states, regard wars, not been effective consumer confidence in weed and efficient trademark enforcement, cannabis add-on mechanism confuses, this also causes overreach because agencies don't know how to interpret, 3, do both, 4, do the plan and cannabis over other issues, cannabis must be functionally textually key to objectivity, background and research, no net benefit, equity, and unethical IP exists for centuries, not the impact, there's all causes to equity in the squo, condos reach to reject the team, A, fairness, the net outside of street currents and contradictions to 2AC, strategy B, clash, good background, something argumented irresponsibly, this will solve cannabis, we promote theories, states. 1, do both, C, and small on 2, does it solve, A, scope, impossible to carry, every state for trademark owners throughout shipping, resources will only achieve a fraction of the benefit that 6 and B, preemption states themselves, is that their own trademark enforcement is worse than the superseded manufacturing statute, that's 6 and C, overreach, lawful use, USPDO policy, states don't have the authority to change that to become a 4 to 1, either the kind of forces USPDO, which links to that benefit, or can't solve impeachment, Texas incoherent, weakens protection, which still defies the squo, 1, do the kind of over other issues crossed by competition standards, 2, do the kind of 3, no internal, advance is certainly worse, doesn't solve, presidents don't know they're getting impeached because lawful use, or if you have the threats, which change to the kind of cost of nuclear COP19, far right militia take control of the creature by war groups, seriously, potential pro, policy decisions to do for the Trump, acutely, sensitive embarrassment, people in tribunal, spiritual and lash out, bro, directly unpredictable, navigate, raw, no code, author, no catastrophe, says quo, Trump thumbs, Alice already scared, which means that any impact will already trigger 4, do both, either shields or can't be over 5, you plan and impeach, not functionally intrinsic, because that's a function of capital CRA. 1, to solve A, weed effective trademark enforcement is key to certainty, that was on the other page. B, overreach process clarity and interpret USPDO is key to effective agency enforcement, otherwise fair interpretation by T-Time and further story. Most policy that's Rishi C say no lawful use and agency rule causing the USPDO nor the counterplan like they did with the Lanham Act, only fiated agency action solved. 2, to the plan and come out over other issues caused by competition standards. 3, to the government 4, no internal ANO, so a single instance can result in broad or TDB, unique to West Virginia versus CPA thumbs. The counterplan obviously cause precedent to overreach. Extinction system, which the IC focus on really defense. A CD aspect of the competition is very important. Business mitigation, external challenge, equitability, global goaling, cost establishing city biology, could make nature's passion accessible areas, malicious repair, so great, nuclear ability, stability, sure, and so strong, image cost here, and have their ways, last with large fair expertise, good related sounding, could meet intelligence, everything, community collaboration with global risks, greatest intelligence challenges, 5, do both, 6, permutation, do the plan, adopt the plan via the cannabis policy formulation, some process cannabis voting issues, choose the app, example advantage cannabis, they haven't explained any solvency, so give us new answers, point to the plan in any combo, do the cannabis, reject plans without solvency, link to the app, benefit, legalize, do the
the plan and legalize use the net benefit due to the plan through legalization links the net benefit because it still triggers their impacts, can't solve weed because trademarks are key. The brand expansion through generics can't solve harmonization. Otherwise, licensing collapse also empirically fails. Core clock decided they didn't read it, so it doesn't matter. Intent to use this, harm do this, plan intent to use, reduce registration, refuse those arbitrary limitations only complicate the doctrine with no workaround, so only a clear statement of abolition solves cancel commerce, settlement firms don't show intent to use, and it's uncertain which is when you see the extent deference to the plan via a ban on private force and lawful use is the reason that it exists. Removing lawful use scheme or existing requirement creates uncertainty. Politics. Refutation to all unique kind of rats used to see like for extract impossible one pass fail. They did one space called only making against cheap ways. I don't need one against the usher of study with one of them powerful. We're focusing against the consideration how GOP was shorting out losing couple of the second hand forever personally. So it's like with pros, plan Justin reports aren't enough on board. 2 USPD or sheet shorty 17. Coverage policy like whether litigation the possession of ships should be allowed to campaign. They shape like wow access as possible to outlet extortion the delegation for legislation shipping email subject to be for legislation have to report use for registrations for Congress, logical policy maker to do the plan and reconciliation. The plan is more partisan because Trump supports Refutation to do Trump to say who is legalized marijuana use Trump both parties with adopt similar marijuana reforms Trump the support for legalization while both parties signal that you'll be able to statement and there's a great lot of way that support legislation room for restriction on any remove cannabis restriction 3 case turns to sad prior question to solving disease is supply chains hadn't solved every SEO this laundry list record is how China Trump films know about regulation on 17 about sending companies in a row no funding no problem to shift back to now and course the society Silicon Valley have like so when it comes to massive sterile when these services don't pass the basics so they have any experience restriction the field movements and pretty much that helps Silicon Valley disrupt industries. Market card in the industries. Ready for cross. Arish, I'm assuming you were sending the T stuff out, so yeah.
Oh, the T stuff? Yeah, I should send that out.
Yeah.
You can turn cross.
Yeah. Okay, that's fine.
We start off with the like contagious and uncertain impact. What's the difference between this and like a regular pandemics?
So Dujon says that it's uniquely like mutating, i.e. it has characteristics that overcomes normal pieces of defense like burnout. Dujon says that that's uniquely dangerous because not only can cancer evade detection.
Okay, so the difference is that it
overcomes burnout and other conventional defense warrants because it's cancer spreading everywhere in humans, emerging suddenly.
But
the health systems can't respond to
the
it.
same could apply to pandemics. But okay, fine. How does the app solve for like sustainability?
Sustainability, explaining one is cross-ex, but essentially it would use increased weed brand expansion to suck carbon out of the air while improving sustainability in the ag. Weed is a key factor.
How much weed do we need to suck carbon out of the air?
We think that the plan would resolve 2 things. 1, current brand expansion obstacles in the SQO, and 2nd, commercialization globally. As per our NTA evidence, we think that this would result in global licensing agreements which are necessary to broadly diffuse weed innovations in the SQO.
Wait, that doesn't answer my question. I'm asking like how much like weed do we need? Like you're
how much weed? We think a decent amount, but we think that the plan will resolve the major barrier, which is trademark acquisition.
So it only solves carbon in the atmosphere. How does it solve like other sustainability?
Oh, yeah. So we have isolated several warrants. First, bee collapse driving ecosystem failures because they support 77% of life on the planet. They suffer from something called colony collapse disorder, i.e. in the SQO, they, because of pesticides and stuff, they just collapse, which means that the environment broadly collapses. The plan would solve that by allowing more effective weed treatment for those bees. Secondly, it would make agriculture more sustainable. The 1AC Sorrentino evidence says that it broadly benefits biodiversity and reduces the amount of emissions from agriculture because farmers should plant hemp in their...
I didn't say that it spills over to solve all of biodiversity. It says like weed is like biodiversity.
We think that the plan would be global, but we would also suck up emissions from other countries. INTA is explicit that the plan...
asking is like, if there's like species like dying out, how does increased weed prevent those species from dying out?
We think that bees are one of the crucial species and they're dying in the short term. Other species dying in the long term is relevant because bees are the only short term species that are going to die right now. We think that that is the core.
All of biodiversity is determined by bees.
We think that bees determine a major portion of biodiversity that, if collapsed, would cause extinction.
Okay, reasons to reject the team or like any theory here.
Condo and process counterparts. Yeah.
Okay. Is the turn on the CRA counterpart, does the app solve that?
Well, it's a DA to the counterpart because
so
the counterpart overturns the MQD.
Just it is that to the counterpart?
Yes.
Back to the case then.
Yeah.
You say that like weed like stops like nuclear winter. The green evidence is really not that good. Like where does this card like explicitly says?
We think it's good enough to substantiate the claim that increased weed innovation would result in enough, weed to buffer nuclear attacks in the future. Or 837. Because you all took it for one. All 7.
takes the rest of the
Wait, how much you say?
An extra 452.
Okay.
You have, I think, 345.
Mark.
The order will be T, no exec, and the cap K.
T no agencies and cap.
Yeah.
Let me get the 2 minutes off. I don't see it. Oh, just pop.
I don't see it, sorry. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're good now.
Topical fertility to not the art of Congress, not the exact that's for soft flow truthful as we meet. They don't meet functionally normal means of the app, which is exact that was cossack plantations and vacuum is bad filter teeth, and most likely means of lazy app. Gentlemen, different action for purpose of T versus K. Net guards predicated off what the app defense of their model. Forms of the negative one topicality first. The counter fails one. Limits disclose the topic include minute changes in US PTO and executive conduct, justifying apps to decrease that change procedural rules or reaffirm hundreds of DC cases, which makes it a court adjudication topic and an exec topic. Limits that way and turn the kid incentivize in-depth case-specific debate that are key to research in class 2's ground log exec apps. Immediately decides deletes politics log and start decides to magnified by 2 is raising to the smallest affirmatives. Predictability 1 limits terms, limit-based truths matter. If the topic is enormous 2, view through its threshold, anything else to lose any limiting into where the topic is a raised to precision, deletes topicality 3, community consensus solves norms and losses shape, research practice over the course of season 4, resolve requires legislative instrument, LSA fire legislative instrument, use for policy resolution, use the term resolve, over limiting 1, we do not over limit and there's no after laws. Our interpretation lets the app change the type of enforcement in statutes, but they must answer the executive counterplan 2 under limiting is worse after been prep to do good research and cut good cards. Medicare news group years of debate is amazing with an affirmative functional limits 1 fail any state to receive punches generic 1 to see with later suffers etc. 2 they're bad. They're 2 generic cost the base 3 limits conclusion we cannot tell functional limits. 2 every single affirmative reasonability 1 they're not reasonable that was above. 2 prefer keeping inter 4 is better debating no guideline for what's reasonable. This man judge intervention was arbitrary and aggressive and erodes negative ground. The cap K capitalism causes extinction. The 2EC has dropped a couple of scenarios. First Arctic resource Arctic wars mineral shortages guarantee imperial US China wars and the Arctic was greenlight extinction. That's a Siddiqui evidence. This internal link turns are often about great power war automatically involving nukes and extinction. 2 disease capitalism cognitively suppresses fear of disease and slows any political response, making the next pandemic infect everyone on the planet. That means we turn off solvency because developing vaccines through private companies are not enough. The dissemination of vaccines will fail on the ends of the government, and people will not take vaccines because of capitalism. 3 is space wars. Competing powers go to space to get resources from asteroids, making inevitable conflict, and nuclear escalation inevitable. That's all the Gerber evidence. Project new one of the responses. Block strategy is predicated off of 2C fuck-ups, and the sandbag and cause late-breaking debates which systematically favor the affirmative. They cannot say reject laundry lists in the 1AR because each of these scenarios had a clear internal link and internal impact attached, where they just dropped. The 2EC just dropped the ball in the cap game. They did not say international action key, did not say utopian fiat bad, did not answer a ton of impacts. Hold the line. Also, the app does not solve these, and climate change is the root cause. Verse 25, ecologists believe that climate change contributing to global numbers of global peace and peace. The K totally turns all their sustainability and warming impacts will have arguments below. Why growth is totally unsustainable, makes body cops inevitable, and why the affirmative business law framework counter the negative dispute the desirability of the act's consequences or counter justifications. 1. The net benefit is critical class creating model of debate where both sides are incentivized to clash over ideological assumptions speaks debaters. The more reflexes, but that's better, best for avoiding neoliberalism, void total tendency to probably more building better, and allow us to make love internalize or restricted via non recognizing taking intellectual property constraints and relentless and solving global commitments. It commits an actually term product and transparency. No more critical think about way design puzzles that better question about world government. Keeping examining more critical world change debater or critical fact more expensive set of possibilities of understanding apart, more reflexive understanding. 2 are interrupt turns after ground. They still get to read the app. I get offense from both unique consequences and justifications. Yes, right line. Links must be to reasons why the plan is a good idea. Perm salt links to author index 4. The K is predictable. It's a property K on the intellectual property topic. Framing for the standards. The 2 sees an incomplete argument. No more strike off on your extrapolation. They say clash will concede. There will be clash over his pedagogy values with 1 year cannot go for no such a championship, but their interest worse makes team social positive accountability and extreme impact turns. They say fairness when their worst model deletes all K debate by definition. Since no epistemology is unique or causal, which is more radical to net ground. Property K's only function limits itself like uniqueness. And IPR means nothing. 3 infinite prep first line speed from near imaginary or solve force to inevitable speed, resource conspiracy, and judge bias. They say case outweighs. We agree with the utilitarian framework, but our impacts outweigh even under that. Ethical calculus, permutation to both. 1. The perm savers. 1 EC justifications are incompatible with degrowth, and I'll do the link debate here. Framing issue is that the 2 EC just totally dropped the link. Their only response was it is non-unique, which is not a complete argument. Extend the industrial commons link. The origin of industrial capitalism draws on the 18th century seizure of the commons into property with the goal of creating markets. That's the Siddiqui evidence. Further, IP uses that same neoliberal logic of trusting the invisible hand with markets to solve every problem the world faces, from Warrington inequality, which only replicates ecological crises. Intellectual property, by definition, commodifies non-material things. It literally expands capital to make profit off of knowledge. Any new answer in the 1AR to the link is going to be brand new, besides it being non-unique. And framework, obviously, double-minded means to evaluate the perm through philosophical competition, and every link proves the justifications of the ultimate one is incompatible. 2. Inclusion of IP equals a movement. That's normal means because the app cannot function absent IP existence. A is active decision, only after dismantlement. The proper prevents an Anders 19 liberation movement, kind of precarity and equality class practice. We got to happen across the family, read property movement. It's clear problem actual dividing only comes fruits of collective labor, delivering class organized solidarity, legitimate advance. But corporations working in the United before we kill it, the blues under chains. These corporations they control everything created under the perm quad 22. IP corporations rule on all activities we give it, providing related innovation and data. Price cost 1 per year, create a free market fees, IP, paper, content, model, sharing knowledge, widen access and enhance regionalization. They say PerfCon is good. A, advocacy skills, test core arguments, two different viewpoints with both educational math and policy making. B, an lecture model only allows for either the peer to decide on one, and C allows for reverse testing, which is worth competitive equity. C, logical decision making. The judge should vote for the best policy. Anything else in the real world returns to offense. D, advocacy skills, test core arguments from different viewpoints with both educational math and policy making. E, even if they get PerfCon, that's not a reason why they can sever the reps, reject the argument out of the verbs. And 2, C, choice check abuse. They say cap sustainable will do the sustainability debate here. Both are totally sustainable. 1 is AI, misled both oriented intelligence. Draw distinction. Martin 23 mitigating risk of AI should be able to provide activity, climate change dynamics, work on themselves, groups on dating, committing, state, near side of the university and development. Charles not to the US and cost and really short notice. 2 thermodynamics. The loss of being the structural limits of proceed July 24. Structural options expand energy change. 4 not just actually degradation of something. It will provide energy system complete everything from reverse system external. It's one time with people. Get a country over capital loss ability nature again community one time capacity and options for possibility. Environmental defense by becoming efficient by ways recycling economic cross neutral growth. Must be efficient limits environmental collapse. 3 financialization makes economic collapse inevitable. Average 24 capitalism. Compare second nation the balance of data economic opportunity capital by finance speculation rent seeking. It's all working class earning one key funded no more financial speculation sustainable. Period unprecedented direct cost equal by inflation and as in saying the astrology. Finish that condition 4 decoupling fails. Here 7 independent warrants 1 year's answer. European at all 25 24 which will entry record levels get the amount of energy from oil quality and also backwards been unfolding. No also energy position energy addition. Investment required global for carbon action will be 5% a year for global GDP roughly equal bank and will be by next year. Energy security US tax security borders George Hyper activity government and common guard. After Russia got a natural gas export in European peaceful complexity and mining, middle government and agri take global commerce will have a double being for policy vision extremely unlikely to take 20 years of help in major mine. Another also look so political concept about 10 styles of electricity and transition and chronicle great power logic chain. It took 10 dollars in various solar EV public good things for care which transition to close the point of tech tech. Dramatic increase worldwide demand for little search by option energy change to advanced manufacturing of mining. Give us that power area which we have made usable when natural gas play lower than it was forecast 2 years ago. 5 double bind and solve it if sustainability is true for agriculture and warming then the app is key to solve their impact because status quo solves and recession is inevitable from frontier of smart forth the total economic turmoil of the world by being counter and retail, globalization with social calculation, big recession in the next 12 months that would drag GDP by beyond 10%. They say it's not unique. Congrats, you realize that this is not a dissad, but we do not need uniqueness because the justifications of the plan's capitalism is bad and will cause the impacts in the long term. They say private actor fiat, no link. We do not do private actor fiat. We just imagine a separate worldview, and from the actions taken by the government, we think the government can facilitate growth. They say case is a dissad that is wrong. We'll straight turn it. Capitalist innovation fails because less efficient and depends on crises and externally make global surveillance regime inevitable. Only degrowth innovation solves. How some 21 good innovation have technical levers procedure goes without good innovation. They also talk about that inventions of crisis surveillance have to show human freedom. Those who decide inevitable innovation and inevitable decisions can be your life degrowth is sensible slavery. What causes happen to growth blockchain be asking to distribute and microwave cooperative centralized currencies. The result of material improvement is so documented inevitable on the capital that levers and necessary tools to wealth building investment public goods liberation. Control of equal innovation, capital efficiency, waste energy, including data obsolescence, or integral technology. They say transition wars. They just asserted that without reading evidence or giving a warrant. So hold the line, a new one here answers. But one, no link. Deeper doesn't permanently influence the economy, but instead creates consumption. And production limits all directly more socially beneficial adds as a DK inserted in a doc for reference. We got to avoid this word later to the state hub and model public private company again and market after nationals. Financial and consumer idea transactional peers so that will remain lower risk competition knowledge avoiding the sovereign participation to be widening to local participation enterprise. Think about that thing favor two, the goal fall one, not discontent doing it as well as you should think I'm slowing down. Fish I can build an avalanche change or defense being covered in a point of time for those conspiracies and I know what to go. Use property rapid growth made it possible around the view is mindset shifting equal 23 times the sport per square. Serving 800 research by 7%. Yes, work with 80% giving about finding a living regardless out of economic growth number of people hiding or legal consumption. Putting our planet over 3 transitions succeeds towards 24. So that's on social society, over society, or because properties participate in political power. Not theory social formation transition from capitalism to socialist. Everybody socialist.
Ready for cross?
Yeah.
Let's do it here. Okay. So, good?
Yeah.
Alright. Framework, do we get a perm?
Yes.
So, justifications to the plan. What counts as a justification?
If the plan says that something is a good idea, or if like
Whereas the 1AC said, quote, capitalism is a good idea.
we read a link about how intellectual
Yeah, let's go to that.
property
Your analysis says capitalism created IP in the 18th century through patents, copyrights, and other things.
Yeah.
What about expanding, like, the lawful use requirement in trademarks triggers, let's say, all of capitalism?
You let like people get trademarks essentially.
Okay,
by
so-
making
Weed companies getting trademarks is what props up the military, the, like, Microsoft,
that
Apple.
is
It's
an example of seizure of the commons. That is
an example of seizure in the commons. I guess how much commons do you need to create to solve for all of those impacts that you listed? Like
What's the question?
how much commons do you need to seize in order
This
to
isn't
win?
like a counterplan to that. We're criticizing your justification.
Okay, I get that, but you're saying you turn and solve the case. I want to know what actions you take to solve the case.
If you're talking about like advantage one, we think that the internal link to that is innovation, and we brought evidence saying that in a degrowth world, innovation.
Yeah, I actually want to talk about that. What does degrowth do to solve innovation?
Degrowth would result in like the government essentially being more centralized and directing
Centralized
innovations
government
instead of-
planning, who allocates money to what for, like, would it be like a prize council in the government?
It would be similar to that, yeah.
Okay.
The government would choose.
So what about that is mutually exclusive with doing the plan and increasing trademarks if we abolish the rest of
Doing
intellectual
that
property?
severs the 1AC's justifications.
So only answer is framework. That's fine. So I want to talk about that. So philosophical competition. So if the 1AC has any, so how much of the link do we need to beat to get the perm? Or is it just offense defense?
What do you mean? Like our link? If
Yes.
we win our link, you don't get the perm because that would be severing out of your justifications.
Oh, that's fine.
What you can disprove is whether or not our link is a proper link.
Okay, great.
Like,
So
things like author and that's are not a link.
okay, great. So yeah, I want to go to the alt. So does intellectual property exist post alternative?
No.
Okay, so all IP abolished, that's a mandate?
Well, it's once again, it's not like a policy proposal, but we think in the world of the all, no IP would not exist.
Do you, like, you imagine IP disappearing? Yes? Okay. AT private actor fiat, so you only imagine the USFG changing. Do you imagine movements taking over the government?
What do you mean by taking over the government?
So, like, do you imagine that movements, i.e. communist parties, etc., come into the USFG and take over as, like, the vanguard, or do you imagine the USFG adopting...
We don't think communists would, like, revolt and take control of the government, and we wouldn't see up that.
So you imagine the USFG adopting socialist and degrowth policies that abolish intellectual property?
Yeah, shifting its economic
Okay,
stance.
that's fine.
What about the side?
takes me. Oh, God. Wait,
Wait, what? 950 or not 948 actually. No. What we did that 940.
Everything good for order?
I don't have the
Yeah,
doc.
I don't have the doc, but that's fine.
Okay. The order is the equity counterplan, the state's counterplan, the impeachment counterplan, the Buddhism K, the advantage counterplan, the politics aside. Advantage 1, advantage 2.
Okay, that's a long order.
Wait, where's CRA in there? What is that?
Forgot CRA, but after the advantage counterplan.
I still don't have the doc for sure. Just pause it. See it, Raj?
Yeah, I
I
have the doc.
just not this one. I don't have it yet. Give me a minute. Loading. I'm gonna search. No. Nope. I don't really have the chance. If it takes too long, we can slack it right now.
Yeah, I might just slack it too because it's
Yeah.
not showing up.
Okay. Slack them to me. I don't know. Let's upload. I'm just doing that. Got it. I'm fine.
Okay, everything good.
Mhm.
Conceive the permutation, test the competition, framing issue for all these flows, theories, and reason, reject the argument on the team, answer, con is good, we get what we did, A, necklace, average personalized speech, and we problem, negative 3, missing for round B, innovation 2, the reciprocal, con is set by division, really base, which is better for education, logic, majority means always improve, design while training the app, anything else arbitrary, self-serving, reasonability, con, instead of something found out, which is worse for class, just but doesn't solve no consensus, and what it even is, that solve necklace with 2, it's determined block, doesn't solve innovation because it disincentivizes, ratio out 1, strategy, incentivizes math, pro scale, and playing span to force, the perm, strat, and times used on the could arrive or disability violation of anything, we impact to see choice because forces to use smarter, a clash is wrong. We have an inroads because outweighs that debate isn't a PG thesis and allows for top level knowledge over time. Now, things, the rest of the comp plans concede the politics, does that concede Trump, thumbs the impact node, net office, advantage 1. Extended 1C2, organized crime is too fragmented to make it dead. They drop that networks are under resourced and issue rejects essentialist height that's similar. Evidence not existent to commercial lending. And the 14 organized crime is organized crime is money. It is a social thing that wants to equate visibility to that track one important organized crime must deploy violence but only if necessary. Organized crime is related to recent threat is not existential in all causes of the site of crime. This is their own cast of 23 evidence. State failure results from power running will then host O crime now would create for instantly formulation problem to meant to help reduce O crime. Terrorists with no centralized authority because of an opportunity for NSAs. The hypothesis increases the factors of power by team NSA. Once failed, company power under state terrorist network organized crime over Russian to take control and growth drives and fuels discontent rockers. 12 growth as increasing material growth fuels political social residential shockwaves obtained through society leaving the door open to groups of initial frustration, no impact. Where in 20 revenues in perspective are small after new power strategy of crime disorder illustrated and particularly centralized emission revenues such as have posed a massive net definitely the estimates on the basis the problems can factor like contra cost and how much will corruption the labor market may be also having one value the data in support of fragmentary report heroic assumptions cut the card at assumptions and extend 1C4 they've straight up dropped the Nordhaus evidence these are fine now based on population crazy statistics but there's also zero internal link climate change is root cause and remove seal never says CCD is driving a B extinction. Ecologists believe climate change will both define the number of bees of bees and also zero chance to use alone soft Lloyd might be right. We produce the most food, but never says we have the most or even the majority of bees. And also, there's no impact, there's no evidence of the population stable and scientific statistical nature studies are widely rejected and agriculture is adapting 80% of the use bee farms with declining 2% of the species is in tree farms and the US relevant causes of environmental obviously morality aspect, ag industry got much better. Extent 1C5 to drop the rooster evidence. Saturn magazine should make you very, very skeptical about the weed saw's nuclear war impact. Obviously, weed isn't fast enough. Just like nuclear fallout, assuming war actually occurs. Also, more cars, atoms. 18 deposition we can't properly up to enthusiasm plant vertical to build a bunker system. Plant life is highly plausible that existing cannabis will revive the planet. Very few like guardians in the fallen shelter in the hands on weed. Next thing, 1C6. The only response to economist evidence was this outdated, but it's from a couple of years ago. So surveys show no major declines in industrial society, destroys insect extinction, has an occur. 18. Loss of insects and human happening faster than past extinction. Loss have everything to do industry farming. Poison is interface to free chain that will literally crumbles with it, forming a new soil. And best study show insect decline is slow. Okay, skip that card. Go to advantage 2. No pandemics or disease impact doesn't cause extinction. One scenario, how does disease reach remote areas and kill literally everyone? Choose models. The upper bound is 0.01%. Those are all annoyed. Don't reject them. Validity, PhD, insurance, economics, also cross exposed. Contagious cancer, same thing, but better resistant burnout, but there are other ones they've conceded. Masking and vaccine solve towards that. Everything simple interventions for vaccinating can be highly effective over never use case about vaccine working to society facing STD factor being service of vaccine in weeks, advanced and medical therapy further improving and study for women who's nursing, which is society facing STD catastrophe might well do here. Inability to develop vaccines to counter novel pathogens. This warrant also answers their argument about supply chains because these supply chains are going to be broken. Vaccine solves also capitalism drives the pandemic, globalization, overuse, habitat destruction, empirics, groups, and many. After COVID, capitalism caused pandemic, globalization, capitalism, social conditions caused pandemics, including forest land, ag disturbances, habitat, economic religion, resulting from capitalism, population, relative resources, destruction, habitats, or restoration resources. Crucial force being pandemic, resilient society is structured, and deeper solves pandemic, Ronald et al. 21, we should organize technology considered unable to merchants about disease connected by number 2 loss and habitat sources of capital food system. Then it's percentages but degrades with reducing for spread is by high living densities, and the emerging tech will be incremental and a minor prediction work by industry. I'll be assisting warning of emerging tech was dissociate industry contribution focus on genetic tech contribution comes from level 1 emerging tech with particular level 3 hypothetical and the balance nutrition level 2 is misleading conclusion not what disagreements are accurate, they are not ability to predict is non-existent, and growth ensures technical regulation over the degrowth cells PR. 18. Thomas is super intelligent, independent of energy battery for information, super intelligent, a lot of capitalist markets and every energy solving consequence of humanity and the whole biosphere. Little room is left for complacent rising new special breeding ground goals shaped by firms while technologies are overcome asymptotically advanced technology allow extreme tech development of large shares of entities such as capitalist rules, interaction, economic selection.
9:43. 41, there will be 2 docs. All send one here. That's simple.
Oh yeah, I forgot to apply so I'm gonna apply again.
Oh, I also didn't reply all.
I don't know why the reply all option went away. Oh, because you guys only sent the one on the meeting. That's why. Okay, I'll respond to the 2 Instagram.
Yeah, I also responded to James. Okay. Here's the stuff right.
So we're gonna go for an order. The order is advantage 2, advantage 1, T, K.
What was acrobatic dots?
Okay.
Is it just the AT Poyo file and then the
Yeah, it's just the card and then it's
Okay.
Yeah. Is that everyone good?
one second. Yep.
Emerging tech is key to regulation of IP is key to regulation of emerging tech. AI causes extinction, and it won't be small. Allenby assumes that regulations occur in the status quo. The alt will ensure that the tech gets in the hands of rogue action, which causes extinction. IP is key to regulation, which is RusCon, which is dropped. No, the Preo is wrong. It's a thought experiment, not about real world AI. And capitalist AI key to purist and infinite pleasure. Top extinction AI research discuss shaping action and with AI. Shaping human work in the more humanly impossible today when using legend, but use constant work in the agent some sort of unlike humans. Subroutines would enjoy working to start to possible humans. Involved in social responsibility to carry out tasks optimized want to carry out exactly that task. Now disease causes extinction, it spreads it and kills everyone. Dropped, it causes civilizational collapse via supply chain collapse, and geoengineering impedes the stratosphere, causing ecosystem collapse, which turns decay. Only supply chains can solve. Burnout is overcome by mutations and incubation times. Vaccines offense against the alt, because those won't be produced if there's no profit motive. Capitalism may result in globalization, but it's solved via distribution of vaccines. The profit motive is key. Advantage 1 can see the defense. It's all irrelevant. T. 2AC2 IPR includes agency enforcement protection, refers to action that helps the rights to owner. That's the Mendel evidence. Preferred for conceit debatability, outweighs preferred for after-ground, outweighs lack of advantage ground, and a plethora of negatives. Generics doom the after. Insert bakes the agency counterplans and picks into the topic. Those are unpredictable and obfuscate the core question of IP good bad and make it about executive agencies good bad. Changing type of enforcement is irrelevant. They make agent counterplans OP dropped. Now, functional limit check, they just said they're generic, but that's the point. They apply to every app and keep the neg in the game. 1, advantage constructions. All apps are burdened with helping IP owners and businesses. Requires large innovation econ dissets like the score solve. Good case debating. Ban counterplan, process counterplans, tiny dissat or patents good bad. Third, second, 2 generic checks limits explosion. Third, ban counterplans create uniqueness for IP or bad, which relates most apps with incoherent advantage and enforcement counterplans check. Now, prefer reasonability, prevent substance crowd out. Concede from condo that that's an impact. Yes, we're reasonable, that was above arbitrariness. It's inevitable and subjective judging, and they're worse in determining minute differences in offense. Causes more judge intervention. Now the K. At the top, a recession will bounce back anyway. They don't say causes extinction, ensures the app solves in the short term, but the all causes the recession, which, if they're right, it results in war. They link harder, dribble fiat solves, and he turns case. They can't go for the movement disadvocates card. 0 says squo capitalism will be overcome by current movements. Now, offense at the top is solved by the perm. B's and warming, we conceded the defense framework. Weigh the app plan and perm against a fiat and legitimate alternative. Their interest is unfair to guys. For let us pre-out as many private actors as we want and delete your ability to create any critique. No app can beat the world peace counterplan. No perms said that what is to discuss the word once link under their interpretation. two internal links. One, off-ground. Profits and counterplans compete off a value statement. Second, private actor fiat deficits are impossible when private actors become angels. That kills fairness, which outweighs. One, it's intrinsic good in the game. Both sides expect to judge to value the debate fairly. Second, turns research. There's no incentive to learn in an unfair game. Third, no offense and negative win only that outweighs the offs. Benefits. They don't assist in anti-capitalist resistance. One turn, they've just fiated everyone becomes anti-capitalist, and they haven't done any planning at all. Second, material challenges with links to the plan. Third, fairness. If you think the decision is unfair, no one learns anything. Reject cards without tags. That makes avoid evidence irrelevant, but we do solve our offense because it's based in the resolution. That was above, no bright line. Anything that can be a justification, including ununderlined parts of cards. We don't delete K-debate. They just need unique links. First and last speech. Then prep is checked by block and condo. Structural unfairness is relevant. Our link is about procedural unfairness. Perfcon, it takes out framework. They fiated capitalist IP. Action 2 on the other counterplans improves bad faith, and they don't actually believe in anti-capitalist resistance. All their answers were fairness-based, which proves that fairness is a prior question. Perm do both. Either the ultimate massive revolution that overwhelms the link towards 2 weak compared to the SQUO. Net benefit is a short-term risk of the case. Sustainability is relevant when the perm solves it, especially when the alt fiats through government and practice. Banning the plan is a result, not an effect of the alt, but the plan can be rolled back in the long term, which solves activism. Anything else lets the fiat out of nuke war impacts. Links aren't disas. Profits are an effect, not a mandate of the plan. Now, activism is wrong. Removing literally all property except marijuana trademarks is definitely sufficient to avoid reified capitalist culture. No corporations quite assumes that all IP owning businesses stay in place, which is not contextual to the perm. Hours do the plan as part of phasing out IP to NC-Qued. Says that solves no intellectual commons link. The perm overcomes this so that it isn't new. The alt doesn't solve, first is disease. It doesn't result in supply chain. They explicitly said it precludes globalization, which ensures no distribution. Second, and natural pandemics are inevitable, which is conceded from the bomb evidence. Second, emerging tech, that was on case. It drives it underground as immediate effect of degrowth being implemented. Third, private actor fiat is bad. It makes refuting. Everyone becomes an angel. Impossible. The alt doesn't solve decay either. There's no spillover globally. Other countries like China and India will keep polluting. Jimmy, what else do you want me to say?
Okay, so back to T.
Back to T.
List examples of process counterplans.
Okay,
Do we
process
have-
counterplans, things like CRA, signing statements, all compete off of value statements in the 1AC position.
No, not valid statement. Agent.
Or-
Agent counterplans. T.
My bad. Yeah, they all compete off of agents because the USFG is required to be, or they require you to be executive, which results in interbranch conflict counterplans that end up fiating the plan, which we think are.
AppRep doesn't check infinite new mechanisms.
AppRep doesn't prep infinite new unpredictable mechanisms using different branches.
Limits and ground push is checked by topic.
Limits and ground are checked by topic generics, which is the functional limits.
Yeah. Free transition war CPR.
Okay, that's fine.
How many should we have 345
I marked Joe at 345.
Start prep now. The order is cap, K, case.
K, advantage 2?
Yeah.
Cool. Good. Arush? Cool.
Trinidad negative warming causes extinction of Ohio's earthquake results in sea level rise, kills billions of people, leads to war, spiritism, which there money see petty evidence says causes extinction, which we have conceded also results in B collapse in the next 4 years, which also kills most people on the planet. It outweighs on time frame. It is possible to innovate our way out of pandemics and to innovate artificial intelligence if half the people, everyone on the planet is completely dead. It outweighs on scope. Only this impact is existential. Both sides agree, and none of their part. We have impact defense to their scope, but they have no impact defense to ours. We also turn the pandemic scenario. The 1 and C explicitly, the 2 and C explicitly flagged where they dropped how capitalism psychologically numbs people in terms of responding and perceiving things like pandemics and disease as an actual problem. This was flagged in the 2 and C. The 1 AR didn't really respond to it. Their only response was durable fiat solved, which is incoherent. This is not about the plan getting rolled back. This is about people not innovating properly or people not taking vaccines because of the effects of capitalism. Hold the line on you 2 AR responses. Now, framework, send the counter-interp that acts as a way justification of the consequences of the we get links off the core justifications of the 1 AC. That also means the perm cannot sever out of their justifications. The key question you must answer what decided framework is whether debate should have any place for the K or interp is the most ad-friendly and pro-blame focused interp you can think of. While still not for Ks that disagree with 1 AC's core ideology, their interp entirely erases all K debate regardless of what they assert. That is bad since it eliminates critical clash. Only KB policy debates incentivizes debaters to research the ideological assumptions of the 1 AC which develops a skill set of ideological interrogation. Equipping debaters with skill set to research justifications outweighs for 2 reasons. 1 is research. Limiting scope to rails average environmental policy. No research or any real-world solutions since they're deemed too difficult from the start. The impact of sustainability offense or retooling capitalist tools will inevitably collapse. 2 is class. Questioning if it's logical relations with functions. Better advocates are more trained to address societal needs, challenge policies, and engage in deep deliberation, which turns their impacts will avoid evidence. I'm pretty sure the 1 AR just dropped our impact, answered this like the fiat K, and extended their fairness offense. Hold the line for civilians and new 2 AR answers. Now, fairness. Framing issue is that our interpretation lets you weigh the consequences of the 1 AC against the impact of our links in the debate. It's still centered around the plan, even if the 2 AR waxes rhetoric about the impact of fairness for education being big. Their internal link into that is way smaller than our offense. They say that our interpretation doesn't let people get perms. This is wrong. You still get the perm, which is explained above, which is exactly what deters Ks that do not contest justifications of the 1 AC. Philosophical competition doesn't automatically delete permutations. The negative team can always whine that a permutation is philosophical severance, but that doesn't matter when the threshold for a link being a justification is high, which was explained above. If you're confused what distinguishes a justification from a rep, that was a question to resolve on the link debate, not framework. And they have the chance to answer this property K and explain why their marijuana policy isn't based in neoliberalism. But the 2 AC just completely dropped the link, so you should punish them for making mistakes. They say utopianism and we get to fiat everyone. We did not fiat everyone changes their minds, which will be later below theory and Perms check. The K must have an alternative and links that are compatible but not too powerful to overcome them. It means the world peace counterplanetary utopianism would be easily permutable because the app could just prove property and world peace are compatible. This also answers are compatible. They say no broad line between justifications and reps. Under our interpretation, critiquing the options of our line, reasoning whether plan is a good idea, i.e. whether innovation is societally beneficial or whether property ought to be preserved because assumptions intrinsic to the concept of intellectual property. All the hyperbolic examples of 2 AR will spew like a card mentioning war once does not rise to the threshold of a link because it's not a justification of why the plan is a good idea, which was explained above. Permutation to both fails. 1. Mutually excused our framing interpretation of 1 AC is tied to its justifications that can move to capitalism in case ideologically opposed to capitalism. For the same reason, a banned counterplan is mutually exclusive with the plan text. The alternative is mutually exclusive with 1 AC. This doesn't mean that our interest justifies the world peace counterplan plus war paper, which was down above. PerfCon is good. Constantly neckflex from condo. Too many job warrants in the 1 AR for the 2 AR to extend this. 1 is neckflex or model only valid for either the K or disad in the 1 AC. It allows for rigorous testing, which affords a bit of equity. If one position contradicts the other, the corrective for that is that a smart 2A can make concessions, not bar these arguments altogether. It's infinitely aggressive and leads to a slippery slope of the active bracket arguments that they don't like. Choose advocacy skills, test for arguments from different viewpoints, which builds educational breadth and policy making. This isn't fairness based and is based in education and all the offense we had above. They say pandemics inevitable, didn't give a warrant, but we turned their vote to solve, which is above. Emerging tech will be answered on case we are not doing private actor fiat. They say no global spillover. 1 preempted, this was a new argument in the 1 AR across it off like block 2. They dropped in other countries and people across the world are disillusioned with the growth imperative now, which means they'll follow on even without private actor fiat. Case. Capitalist growth makes deregulation inevitable and ensures extinction from AI. The core evidence is so good. It says the neoliberalism misaligns profit incentives, which ensure that firms try to circumvent inevitable regulations to any way possible. It also places power over tech in the hands of firms instead of the government, which further weakens safeguards. Employee in debt doesn't matter because the party saying is a thought experiment is the development of advanced tech, which we've conceded is inevitable. No warrant for IP is key to regulation. Bruce Kahn is about ethical IP under a framework of equity that the app doesn't solve. This also isn't a dissad to the alt. The 2C never said ban AI. We said devote solves better. Topic is offense for the alt because the card never says capitalist AI is the key internal link. The alternative is
AI under a framework of deep growth that aligns profit incentives and solve. They've also dropped the piece of evidence saying that socialist innovation is key to, is able to solve innovation and solve AI. So any new to our answers, Spanish should be caught up. New disease impact, risk of civilization will collapse if the supply chain scenario is zero. You should pervert statistical models of no evidence with a PhD of unqualified hypothetical evidence. Instead, to work to have vaccines and massively reduce the risk of the impact by 67 times compared to proofs. Half drives pandemics, severity evidence, globalization, these interrelationships are worse, which was answered above, and we turn their beliefs up.
Okay, so how much? 240. Right. Give me 1 second.
It's going to be advantage 2 then. Are we good? This is an easy and to balance offense, defense, seize out ways to cause distinction, though one is the bomb is that collapses civilization and readiness, which causes collapses labor markets, supply chains, etc., which are all independently existential because cancer and new vectors are going to collapse society with no defense. The second effect that you can vote on is AI creating P-risk. The 1AR Thomas evidence is that it creates infinite pleasure through labor, etc., which the alternative would abolish by aligning AI through socialist lens, which proves that capitalism is key, existential, inevitable. It proves our offense because capitalism is the only way to align it, which outweighs our sheer magnitude because you know that infinite pleasure machine is inevitable unless socialism comes to shut it down. The card about being equity, not about IP, is new, but it doesn't matter. Ruscon, they dropped the 1AC7 review. Evidence is that private actions undermines IP regulations broadly. Ruscon says that IP is the only vector to regulate new tech. Since people file for a new tech, that's the only way to check them in advance, otherwise they will not be controlled. Thomas Link is not a negative offense. It's that labor machines create pleasure, which only capitalism can do. Disease being zero models is wrong. Drop the index of their evidence that doesn't assume civilization class and new models that overwhelm the Noy card is from a college undergrad survey with zero culture before to our problem analysis, which actually analyzes for effect the vaccine stuff, that is our offense because proves that supply chains are necessary to distribution. They drop the richest money argument that supply chains are necessary to distributing vaccines in the first place. The alternative would deglobalize, which makes it impossible. Capitalism costly disease, and no matter diseases are broadly inevitable from travel. Only the affirmative can solve. Go to the K. Now, offense, defense is how you should frame your battle. You know that the permutation usually solves 100% of the lane because 2 and R has not contextualized anything. The lawful use and framework, we automatically win this debate. They might win some risk at turns case, but we are also winning some risk that the alternative doesn't solve. This might not be satisfying, but you know 1% risk. The alternative doesn't solve means that you should vote affirmative. The triadice over the top. We have conceded impact defense on advantage 2, so I'm just going to classify all of their ones for YB as our high now and why warming is not an impact, which is 0 nor hot evidence. They do not get to take that. The external disease turn stuff. The one of your answer that says that supply chains are key. It's not about innovation. If the old tries to solve innovation, it's about private action suits which are shutting down medical brands, which only the affirmative can solve that because that is collapsing pharmaceutical supply chains. Even if public action is being inactive now, the permutation certainly solves any reason why capitalism might ruin disease response, which takes it out. Now, I'm going to go for a framework interpretation. You should weigh the affirmative's unique chaotic consequences against the functionally covered interference outweighs. Note that it's the only intrinsic good of the game. It turns education because nobody learns in an unfair game. There are 2 internal links. 1, they allow process cannabis to compete off of value statements. A cannabis could say, well, the app endorses the federal government, so we get the NGA cannabis, we get the CRA cannabis, etc., which are all impacted on T. Drop that on T. That app ground is low this year, so it is try or die because anything else makes the affirmative being impossible. Second, world peace cannabis, they can just simply fiat everyone being into and like say, oh, you have capitalist justifications, and there's no threshold for how much capitalist justification is enough, which is truancy cross-sex, and instantly delete from the ground. Critical clash. There are several answers. 1, material link solved. The 2 and R drop this. You can simply say whether by material cost capitalism, i.e. what lawful use. The 2 and R has not done that. 2, turn. They decreases the level of skills. They allow negative to fiat. Things like degrowth worlds, which are not material and sort of illusory and claim they solve everything without actually contesting the substance of the affirmative, which makes us worse anti-capitalist fairness first education because no one knows they're in unfair game. Research has no trouble with making the affirmative solve because they actually have to cut the case next and research instead of asserting out because Raleigh capitalists clash up valid cannot solve at all costs like family friends. Obviously over-determine our separate activities, which was dropped. Now the somehow yes bright line. What is the justification? If you cannot give a satisfying answer to me in the RFD, then you cannot determine a bright line. The cards justify the plan, words justify the plan, a rhetoric justify the plan. Anything could be construed. Think of it not as how Bellarmine would do it, but how Berkeley Prep RV would control something, would construe something as a justification, which means that all this stuff is relevant. Now the refutation certainly resolves the rest of their offense. The internal link stuff was done about philosophical competition. Theory is arbitrary. No one wants to vote on it. The process kind of stuff was done about affirmative ground. You should overcorrect. No one votes on theory. Permutation do both thoroughly resolves most of the alternative. The 2 and R explanation about activist division, etc. is wrong. Drop the indict. The Andrew evidence says that it is mostly about most of the IP system. We can do non-mutually exclusive parts of the alternative, i.e. the double one, i.e. we can abolish most of intellectual property. We can abolish all patents, all copyrights, etc. But maintain enough trademarks to abolish the lawful use requirement. That solves the case and solves the alternative. There were no reason why trademarks or the lawful use requirements is intrinsically bad in the 2 and R. Has no explanation. 2C cross proves that IP is simply a product of the 21st century, which can be solved. Perfect proves that our framework arguments proves that they are more invested in fairness. The educational stuff doesn't matter. Every justification for it proves that it's about negative flexibility, which means that they have contradicted their own academic practices. The justification for it is our argument because they want debates to be fair and educational, which is our offense because they care more about that. The anti-capitalism, the alternative, it cannot solve the case. It collapses supply chains and tech regulations. When I see Ruscon says that IP is the key vector of regulations. Disease, they collapse supply chains by deglobalizing. The one I see Soren's evidence is that creates global health vulnerabilities, innovation, and other stuff is irrelevant. It does not assume the supply chains internally, which is large enough internally to disease that way. Alternative, regulating stuff is irrelevant because IP is the only way to backstop rogue innovations and imminent disease collapse. The permutation solves the vast majority's links because most of IP would be gone, and they drop that corporations do not assume the vast majority of IP being gone, which solves their offense. Don't are no competition argument besides that, which means that we solve and any risk case must outweigh. Good way.
Is there any for card doc or no? Rush, can you send?
Okay, is everyone good? Okay. Really good today. I voted neg. I think it's harder for the alt. The neg never said defense to warming, so it's a 1AC impact that's definitely existential. And the tuner says it outweighs/turns all the app impacts. The peace defense doesn't answer it because they didn't say warming defense, and the 1AC red impact card, this is the cognition, and turns everything else. So I'll go through like the moving parts of like the external offense and then framework at the end. So first, disease. I think they have like some defense. The Noid card is 2 authors or PhDs. I'm not sure that this is based on an undergrad. There are countermeasures, and also just might be inevitable. Like the 2AR and 1AR don't really answer the argument that profit incentive means that vaccine distribution doesn't occur or it becomes too expensive to become accessible or scalable. Interconnectedness, unclear if it makes disease worse or better, because it might increase disease response, but it also means that disease is more likely to spread, and decoupling would like mean the disease is more localized and the spread would be constrained. So like that offensive component against the alt, I don't think was enough to outweigh like you just like don't really have any defenses forming impact. Second, the AI thing, like the Twitter doesn't really do impact at all, and the Twitter says if we all die, then we can't do pleasurists. Also, like very quick/unclear in terms of explanation on like the Plato turns it, cap is not key, socialism can also innovate and align things with what would maximize human need. Lastly is framework of the perm. So the offense defense thing, it was unclear why this would necessarily help you because the inverse is also true. Like they would have some offense against the perm that only the alt solves, and like they're also not necessarily going for like it doesn't solve, which isn't really the big part of the tuner, but just like it severs the 1AC. So I think the neg is right that the 2AC and 1AR, or the 2AC saying clash and fairness means to should strike a balance between being fair and educational, and you don't have a ton of defense to their impact. So like no subjectivity shift doesn't really answer like the neg against the cap K. Debates are better because 1ACs are better. It's intrinsic to the topic and to the most intrinsic form of rejoinder. Other arguments are worse forms of that, which means the debates are more educational, even if it doesn't change our mind to become anti-capitalist. Those are still debates that should occur. Conversely, I think they have like some cuts to fairness. So you get the plan, links need to have impacts that can outweigh the case, and you can debate about whether the alt truly philosophically competes with the 1AC. The 2AR line that's like it's undefined what a justification is like sort of their point, because it's like whether or not the 1AC actually defended something or prescribed something to be good, desirable, or true, or if it didn't, is solved by saying that the 1AC did not say that. But the neg is right that like in this debate, the 1AC certainly said that like property, like capitalism, innovation, and the profit motive driving it is good, which I'm unclear why that's unfair. Questions?
Oh, okay. So, yeah, okay. So, framework, filter, perm evaluation means severance, means theoretically legit, I assume?
Yeah.
Okay. So, if we had one framework, would that have made anything different or no?
I think it's still a little hard because you don't have like a lot of offense against the alt. Like you need a reason the perm is better than the alt, and I don't think that's really ever explained or present within any app speech, which makes it difficult for like you to win on your offense defense, because if the perm and the alt are equal, is like the only scenario in which you win.
Okay, makes sense. In terms of like, did they say defense to warming in the 1NR, or that was, because they did say that in the 1NC, right? Like Nordhaus and stuff?
Nordhaus is B's defense.
B's defense, not warming. So then.
I don't have the one in our doc, so I actually don't know what it.
Okay, so yeah. So then if they straight turn warming, I guess we'll have to extend the internal link to that.
Yeah.
So app needs to say cap innovation key.
Yeah, you just say the app solves warming or cap solves warming.
So cap solves warming, so like briefly extend sustainability, because then like time coverage wise, because like obviously perm double bind would be the ideal 2AR that we want to give. So what do you think the 1AR was missing in that?
Like you need like small external offense, like the perm cannot just like all be like defense is all 100% of the game, because most of the time you're not going to be able to like meet that threshold, or the execution differential between the two teams won't be enough for you to be like it solves 100% of everything when they have like 5 perm cards and it like maybe slightly undermines things, and then have an impact that the alt does not solve, that the plan solves, which is the net benefit to the perm, and then like brief defense to everything that you don't think the perm would capture 100% of.
So more like carded, so one of y'all maybe would benefit like cards on transition war and stuff like that, and go
Yeah.
on that.
You definitely need offense against the alt.
So like external offense, i.e. triggers war and more cards on that.
Well, it can be external, like alt bad, like transition wars. It can also just be like does not solve the case.
Okay,
Like-
so more explanation of deficits in terms of disease might not have been the best because they probably solve it. What do you think we should have hammered on in the one area that's like, alt clearly doesn't solve this, like takes their stuff? I was thinking, oh, crime maybe after the debate, but I'm not sure.
Well, the adrenaline dual crime is counterfeiting, which I feel like they have pretty good inputs to. I kind of like the tech Kuznets curve thing, like the Astromanor cards that are like if we like stopped innovation now, or like we realigned
So
instead of
like the
selling-
time apparel stuff.
Yeah.
So that and the
So-
2AC?
That impact, yeah, and that impact is also in the 1AC, like the emerging tech impact.
So leverage tech more as sort of
Yeah.
the thing that's useful. So do you think the 1AR could have swung like that as like, oh, because they did say they solve innovation, which was like the thing, because I thought, well, they solved innovation, so you don't really decelerate tech was my concern with like this innovation approach, because they have like, I don't know, they have cars, they have stuff on at the top, middle, bottom of the 2NC on why they solve innovation. Like, is there a way to deal with that, or do you think we could
Like
take
just
something?
read a card that innovation is bad, it's slow, it's like bureaucratic, like just like,
So debated like the R&D kind of plan.
yeah.
Okay.
But it's also unclear, like I thought you were doing well in terms of 2NC crosses and like BT grow, but also innovate, like what does that entail? And just
Yeah.
like teasing that out more.
So like 1AR, maybe even just kick advantage 2 and kick most impacts out advantage 1, or no, go all in on the tech stuff and like that, and then impact turn the alt.
You kind of both agree on impacts. Like there's very little external offense. It's much more just like does capitalism solve it better or does the alt solve it better? So you want to extend like maybe one terminal and then explain why like cap solves it, fin solves it, and alt does it.
Makes sense.
How do you think we should have answered your framework offense better?
I think the 1AR answer was the right one, which is just like our interp is better for anti-capitalism because like comparing economic systems in the abstract, like degrowth versus capitalism versus like teasing out like whether it would be good for particular sectors or like specific policies that could be within like in the direction of degrowth but also use capitalism to like facilitate the transition. Like all of those things are important for being anti-capitalist, and those debates are better than the ones in which like the NAG just like Fiat's like anti-capital, Fiat's degrowth, it all goes away, and like you can get to Auschwitz. But then the 2AR is just like no impact execution, which I think is a lot tougher.
I think I said a term that's like they devolve debates into utopian fiat, and that like reduces anti-capitalist skills. Was that clear in the 2AR, or was that not?
A line, but the 2NR has the like comparing economic systems is good plus intrinsic to like the debates that this card is good.
So more explanation of specificity, good for skills, education.
Yeah.
Okay. As opposed to like paradox, no subjectivity
Yeah.
stuff. Or should the 2AC just not even say clash against the CapK?
That's like CapK. I don't think there's a purpose. Like, when would you ever go for clash? It's the CapK.
So 2AC on cap should only say fairness. I mean, that makes sense. So in the future, not say clash if they can't say, well, debate shapes. So that makes sense. Yeah. Rush.